Hello everyone, welcome to Let's Play Board Game Edition. I'm your host Mark Ion, and this week I'm going to be covering a multimodal tower defense game called Goblins vs. Zombies. Now, because there are so many different ways to play Goblins vs. Zombies, in the rules I'm going to be covering just the basics. I'm going to cover just how to play the tutorial. And then at the beginning of each of the play videos, I'm going to talk about how that version of the game is slightly different than the tutorial. The win conditions change, some of the basic rules change slightly, but it's the same base game played in different ways with the same cards. So I'll cover those in different separate, before the playthrough videos. This rules video is just going to cover the tutorial. So on with the rules. So the setup for the training mode is relatively simple. First, everyone needs to get a set of 3 zone cards. Just the fronts here, the backs here, just to show an example. Everyone's going to want their Guardian home area card, village area card, face up, showing that they still have the Guardian. When the Guardian gets used in the game, which we'll cover later, you flip it over to show that you've used your Guardian. So, but basically it doesn't, these other two, it doesn't matter which side you have face up. The fronts have descriptions of what the zombie actions do, as well as the different turn reminder card. So when you first start, I recommend keeping these face up just as reference. Later on you could use the cool art for the graveyard. So that's what I recommend. But so each player gets one of these. You keep them to play. So this would be for 2 players. Except each player would need more room, obviously. The zombie deck just gets shuffled and put with the basic zombie side face up. For the training mode, they recommend that you remove all the black zombies, which means these zombies here that have like the black and green flags, as well as all the black pepper cards, because they're a little more complex to play, so maybe keep them out for your first game. I'll get into how they work. But if you're used to tower defense games, I feel you can let them in. It doesn't really change so much. It's not that it makes it, they're not too powerful, it's just a little more complicated. The rest of the goblins will look like this. They'll just have a green shield. So if you're going to take all the black goblins out, you take the ones with the black and green flags and you leave everything with the green ones in. So that's setting up the decks. Then each player is dealt 4 cards from the Goblin deck to create their starting hand, and then we move into the different zones of play. So I'll start that now. Okay, so as I said, now we're going to cover the anatomy of the zombie cards. Then after that we'll cover the different actions that the zombies take, and then finally I'll describe some of the different aspects of the Goblin cards. So first to do with the anatomy, every zombie has a name. So we have like the pirate zombie, wizard zombie, ninja zombie. Under that, occasionally, like in the case of the pirate and the ninja zombies, they'll have a come into play ability. So they'll do something immediately when they come into play during that zombie arrival phase. They won't actually wait till the zombie action, their next zombie action phase to do something. So for example, the pirate zombie, when he comes into play, you do the action backup 1 on each field. So he does that action when he comes into play. And the ninja zombie does, when he comes into play, he moves once. So I'll explain what those mean in a second. But basically, these zombies get an extra action when they come into play. Next, below that, you'll notice every zombie has a little red number. That is their health, how many hits they take before they get destroyed and put into the zombie discard pile. Below that, there's a letter, G, F, or I. That denotes what type of zombie there are. So there's 3 types of zombies. There's the G, which is ground zombies. This is your basic zombie. This is what you're going to see the large majority of. The large majority of goblins can only attack ground zombies. So it's what you're going to see the most. Second, there's the F, which denotes flying zombies. Now, these are pretty rare. They're hard to kill, as I said, because most of them can only attack ground zombies, but there are a couple goblins that specifically target and specifically do special actions to flying zombies, so there is something that can be done about them. And as well, they can be targeted by anything that doesn't specify a type of zombie. There are some things like rocket or bomb that hit zombies in specific areas rather than by type. So they can also be used to take out flying zombies. Lastly, there's I for invisible zombies. These things are real trouble. There is no goblins in the game that can specifically target invisible zombies. So they're really hard to deal with. They mean trouble. They require something like rocket or bomb that doesn't specify to take them out. So they're a real nuisance. You got to be careful. There's very, very few of them in the deck, but when they come out, they're a problem. So on top of goblin types, there are different traits. There are 3 different traits that zombies can have. There's quick, there's steal, and there's plant. I'd separate them into quick being one type of trait versus the other 2, which are really more static traits. So quick means that this zombie performs 2 actions during the zombie action phase, rather than the regular 1, because they're quick. Steal and plant, on the other hand, give no natural bonus. Really, they're kind of a weakness. They're kind of something that the certain goblins can target. There are certain goblins that do more damage or do different things to steal or plant zombies. So those are the 3 traits that they can have. Then, of course, you have your action box, which says what the zombies do in the different areas. For the most part, they're all going to have 1 action during the graveyard and forest phase, and then a different action in the village phase. Some of them, like the wizard zombie, only have actions in the graveyard or forest because they're going to act and remove themselves from the board before they would get into that the village area. And the last thing you'll notice is this little die up in the top right corner of each of the cards. They don't interact. They have nothing to do with when the zombie is in play. There are a couple cards that reference what the top die of the zombie discard pile is. So there's a dwarf zombie that instead of acting, he'll wait as long as there's a 2 on the top of the zombie discard pile. So if the pirate zombie was the top of the zombie discard pile, the dwarf zombie wouldn't act. But if say something like the wizard zombie that has a 3 was on the top of the zombie discard pile, it would act. So it only affects other cards. It means nothing on the card itself. It really only matters when it's the top of the zombie discard pile. So that's the anatomy of the zombie cards. So now I'm going to start describing what each of the... Okay, so I've set up a little example area, and I'll flip between a couple to show you what the different actions that the zombies can perform do. So the first and most basic action is attack. This is what most zombies are going to do when they're here in your village area. At the front, and you'll see anything that has a slash in between them means they're going to do 1, and if they cannot do that first action, they're going to do that second action. So as you see, this basic zombie here in the village area is going to attack, and if he cannot attack, he will enter. This thief zombie, on the other hand, has attack wall / enter. So he's going to attack wall, and if he cannot attack wall, he will enter. So I'll get into what that means in a second. So attack is the first basic action. Basically that means it deals 1 damage to one of the goblins at your gate. All goblins have 1 health except for the goblin wall. The goblin wall is the only goblin that has more than 1 health. He actually has 3 health. So he takes 3 hits before he gets destroyed. So for example here, I have my basic zombie. I could have him deal 1 damage to my goblin rock thrower, which would kill him and make me discard him, put him in the discard pile, get rid of him. But I don't really want that because I really like him. He's really good. I could have him deal 1 damage to my goblin wall, which will just leave him with 2 health left. Or I could have him deal 1 health to my flag bearer, which also, because he's just a regular goblin, would deal 1 damage and it would kill him. He would go into the discard pile. So for this example, I'm going to have my basic zombie just do 1 damage to my wall. Now, zombie actions can be taken in any order that you choose. You decide what order. They don't have to go from front to back like I'm going to show here, but they go in whatever you decide is the best order because they're not very bright. So the next action that I wanted to talk about is attack wall. It's slightly different than the attack action because it only occurs with walls. He's a thief zombie. He's very sneaky. He can only be stopped by walls. If I did not have a wall here, he would be entering, and that's really bad. So, but luckily for me, I have a wall here still. But he is quick, so he's going to get to do 2 actions. So I'm going to have him attack wall twice, because that's better. It means he's not entering, and entering is how you lose the game. So he's going to attack my wall twice, dealing 2 more damage. Well, now my wall has taken 3 damage, so it has been destroyed. So I take it and I put it into the discard pile. Put it off to the side for now, in the discard pile. So those are the first moves. Attack, 1 damage to any goblin of your choice. Attack wall, 1 damage to a wall. And only a wall. If there are no walls, he cannot use the attack wall action, and he will use the other action, whatever his other action is. So after that, the next action is ambush. Ambush is similar to attack, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in the front area. Ambush means it deals 1 damage to the most expensive goblin card at your gate. So, as you can see, I have a goblin rock thrower and I have a goblin flag bearer. The rock thrower has a cost of 2, the flag bearer has a cost of 0. So, when this zombie wizard ambushes, he's going to choose to deal 1 damage to the goblin rock thrower, because he's my most expensive one. So he does that, he ambushes, and my goblin rock thrower gets destroyed. It then says that he flees. This is really good for me, because that means he's going to put himself directly into the goblin discard pile for me. I don't actually have to deal damage to him. He did his action, he's good, he's done. So he's going to flee, and he goes away. So that's the flee action. The next another most basic action is the move action. Most zombies have that as their action in the graveyard and the forest areas. So to perform the move action, as I said a little earlier, it just means he moves 1 zone closer. So that's all he does for a turn. He's a little closer, but he didn't do any damage, so that's good. I still have my 1 flag bearer left. And then we're going to move on to this zombie arrival phase and then to the sun. So those are some of the actions. Next, I'm going to get to some of the more complex actions. So the next action I'm going to discuss is backup. Now, when it comes to backup, there's 2 different types of backup. There's backup X, in parentheses, meaning backup, then a number will be following. And then there is backup 1 on each field. So for an example for the backup X, here I have the zombie squad. It says in the forest area, he does backup 4 and then he flees. So backup 4 means you're going to take the top 4 cards of the zombie discard pile and put them into play face down. So let's say there were 4 zombies in the zombie discard pile. I would put them all in his area, whatever zone he was in. Stack them so they're a little easier to see. And they fit in the frame. So I take the top 4 cards of the zombie discard pile, not the deck, the discard pile, and put them into play as basic zombies. Put them face down, and then he would flee. So he leaves and goes into the zombie discard pile now. Now, if there weren't 4 cards in the zombie discard pile, only the number of zombies would show up that was in there. Say there were only 2 cards in the zombie discard pile at the time when he uses the action, I'd only get 2 basic zombies. And the other 2 would just be a wasted ability because there's nothing to make them. The other backup 1 on each field, means basically he's going to back up in every zone, in whatever zone he's in on everybody's field. So in my field, he would back up 1, and I would put 1 basic zombie in. If there was a second player, that player would also put a basic zombie from the discard pile into their graveyard area. So that's what backup 1 on each field. It's whatever zone he is currently in, everybody gets a basic zombie. Now, once again, if there's not enough cards in the discard pile to fulfill this, the player whose turn it is chooses where the zombies go. So you can choose, if you're feeling safe, you can put them in your field. If you think someone else could handle them a little bit better, you could put it in their field. You choose where the zombies go. So that's pretty nice. So those are the two different types of backup actions. So I'll move on to some more. Okay, so the next action I'm going to talk about is flip. That's here on my ninja zombie here. It says ambush and flip is his preferred action one in the village area. So he's going to ambush. As I said, he's going to deal 1 damage to my most expensive goblin, which means my rock thrower, which costs 2, versus my flag bearer, which is 0, is going to be destroyed. So that goes into the goblin discard pile. And then he's going to flip. What it means by flip is you take him and you put him now as a basic zombie. He's now a basic zombie. He doesn't, and you'll treat him as such. Because the basic zombie has just entered play this turn, he will not act. He has already had his action. This basic zombie doesn't get an action as well. The next action is going to be, I want to talk about, is explode. Explode means you destroy him as well as any other goblins at the gate. He will he will only use this ability if there is a goblin at the gate. If there's no goblins at the gate, he will not explode. But as of now, there is still a flag bearer, so he's going to explode, destroying himself, putting himself into the zombie discard pile, and then destroying my goblin flag bearer as well. And that goes into the goblin discard pile. Now, this brings up a situation where the wizard zombie is going to wait. What that means is he's not going to take an action this turn. His normal choice is to ambush and flee. Well, he can't ambush because I have no goblins in play. There is nothing for him to ambush. Well, he's not going to waste himself and fly away for no reason. So he's going to wait, which means this turn he's just not going to do anything. He's going to sit where he is and just stay there. The very last ability that the zombies can have is the reinforcement action. There aren't really any zombies that have this ability. This is really zombie action cards, or some of the special event zombie cards that have those. So you'll see here the event Hope. It has something that happens. It's actually good for the goblins because it is Hope. And then it has reinforcement. Basically, this means take the next card from the zombie deck and put it face up, as if you were having another zombie come into play. So we would do the new Hope, event Hope. We would do that. After that, I would then take the top card of the zombie deck and put it face up, and that would be the new zombie for the turn. So it's reinforcement's something you're only going to see on the zombie events. It's basically say something happens, and then the zombie still comes for the turn. And usually those events affect all players. So, yep, so those are all the different zombie actions. There's a lot of actions, but they're all fairly simple. So now that I've discussed the actions, now we'll move into what the goblins can do. Okay, so there's one other thing I wanted to mention about backup, and that's that zombies that come into play due to backup do not move that turn. A good way to think of it is, at the beginning of your turn, look at all the zombies that are in your field. All of those zombies will get a turn. So, beginning of the turn, we had the zombie squad, the warlock zombie, and we had the jester zombie, which I just added because he's going to come up as well. So we look at our field. Those were the 3 zombies that are in our field. They're going to get actions this turn. So then we do our backup. The zombie squad goes away, becomes 2, and we get our backup 1 on each field. So now we get to the zombie move phase, and only the warlock zombie is going to move forward, and the jester zombie is going to go, because they're the only ones that are in the field still that were in at the beginning. The 3 basic zombies are not going to move because they just came into play this turn. This also comes up in a couple other situations. As you can see here, the wind mage destroys all flying zombies. So a situation that can come up is if you use the wind mage and you destroy all the flying zombies in the survival mode, where instead of being put in the discard pile, zombies are passed to the player to the graveyard of the player to the right. you could use that, he gets destroyed, gets taken away, and then say wizard zombie appears in your field because you killed it in the player to your left, and then so it moves one right and ends up in your field. It will not move because it has just come into play this turn. There are two weird examples of this. The first is the Jester Zombie. In the any solo version, you're considered to be the player to your right. When the Jester Zombie gets killed, you put it into the graveyard area of the player to your right. So that means essentially when you kill it, it comes back into your graveyard area. So let's say I killed it this turn, and it goes here, then I end the Goblin action phase, then the Zombie action phase happens. He still gets to go. Even though I killed him, he's still in my field. He was in the field at the beginning. He is still in my field now. He still gets an action even though I had essentially sent him back to the graveyard area. I know this seems a little weird. I checked with the designer of the game, and that's what he says happens. The other situation you could come up with something like this is using Potapult. It moves one zombie in your field to the graveyard area of any field. If you use him to move one of your zombies, say like the basic zombie, into the graveyard area, that zombie is still in your field, so it will still get to go. So I just wanted to cover how movement works in these weird situations. So next I'll move on to what I said. Okay, so now that I've discussed what the zombies do, I'm going to talk about what the Goblin cards can do. So as I previously mentioned, there are two major types of Goblin cards. First, there are the green Goblin cards, which you play from your hand and they work immediately, starting that turn. And then there are the black Goblin cards, which I mentioned come into play sleeping. So you put them up into play upside down, denoting that they're sleeping, and they will not act until they're woken up. They are woken up by the black pepper card. A good thing to note is that the black pepper card wakes up all black goblins in your field. So if you had two black goblins at your gate that were asleep, one black pepper card could wake up both of them. So that's an important thing to remember. Now, beyond the two major types of goblins, there are a couple different types of goblin actions that I wanted to describe. So first you have your goblins that have reoccurring actions, something that happens every turn. So like here, the Goblin Slaying Shot, it deals 1 damage to the nearest ground zombie in your field. It's going to do that every turn, starting the turn it comes into play, until it leaves or gets killed. Then there are kind of your one-shot goblins, like Goblin Bomb, which says, say, destroy bomb, the Goblin Bomb, and choose an area of your field and deal 8 damage to each zombie in that area. So they're really nice, really powerful abilities, but you have to get rid of the goblin to play them. So that's another one. Then Goblin Trap is another one that's kind of like that. But this is one of the few, I think this is the only green goblin that will not actually work the turn it comes into play. It says here, you may not use this action on the same turn you played the trap. So it's the only green goblin that does not actually act on its first turn if it has an action. And it's not a black goblin that's asleep. So then we have all of the black goblins. Once you wake them up with black pepper, they stay awake. So you don't have to wake them up every turn, except for the Black Goblin Shaman. This is a special case. If you read, as you read here, it says flip all of the steel zombies in your field, then Shaman is sleeping again. So basically, once he does his action, he goes back to sleep and will not act again until you wake him up. So then the next thing, there are a couple ice goblins, so like such as the Goblin Ice Shot. It deals 1 damage to the nearest ground zombie in your field, and if that zombie has quick, put a slow token on it. So the game comes with these little slow tokens that you can put on them. Basically this means that, as I believe I said before, it makes the quick zombies only get 1 action rather than the 2 given to them by their ability. So there are a couple goblins that can do that. There are a couple goblins that have choice of actions, such as the Goblin Archer. The Goblin Archer allows you to flip a flying zombie in your field, or deal 1 damage to the nearest ground zombie in your field. So in that case, you actually get a choice between 2 different actions. The last and probably most unique goblin is the shield. The goblin shield doesn't actually get played at your gate like all the other goblins. The goblin shield is actually played under another goblin to give you an extra health at the gate. You can play multiple shields on one goblin, but as it says here, play a shield below another goblin. Destroy shield if the goblin above shield is destroyed. So say if your goblin got destroyed by an ambush, because it was the highest cost goblin in your field, and he had shields on it, the shields would also get destroyed without having their effect. What shields are good for is when you have zombies at your gate using attack. You can choose to deal 1 damage to them rather than do 1 damage to one of the goblins that can actually do something. So those are all the different types of goblins that there are. And goblins and goblin actions. Okay, so now that I've explained how the turn goes, and I've explained all the different zombies and goblin cards, I'm going to talk about how you win and lose the game, the endgame conditions. So, losing the game is actually pretty easy. The players lose the game if any zombie enters any player's field. So it's not player specific. Players don't lose individually, you lose as a group. Please note that zombies can only enter your enter the village if your guardian is already gone. The first zombie to enter a player's village gets destroyed by the guardian, and the guardian's effect goes off. It is the second one that enters that wins the game because there is no longer a guardian there. So, for example, here I've got a wrestler zombie and a basic zombie at this player's gate. The player has one goblin rock thrower left. He killed everything else, but he couldn't quite do it. So the player goes, he's going to choose to do the zombie wrestler first, and it's going to explode, killing the goblin rock thrower. They both go to the discard pile. And then the basic zombie still has to go. It can't attack because there are no goblins at the gate, so he's going to enter. He enters, and then the players lose. Now, winning the game is a little different. Winning the game has to do with in the training mode. Each of the modes have a different victory condition. So in the training mode, the players win the game when there are 8 times the number of players cards in the zombie discard pile. So for example, if this were a 1-player game and there were already 7 cards, as you can see here, 7 cards in the zombie discard pile, the player could decide that he wants the wrestler zombie to go first. He's going to explode, killing the rock thrower goblin. But then he goes into the zombie discard pile. That makes 8 cards in the zombie discard pile, so the player immediately wins. You stop right there, the other basic zombie doesn't get to go. Because there are 8 cards, the game immediately ends, and the player who is playing wins. So, as I said, it's 8 cards for a single player, 16 cards for 2 players, and 24 cards in the zombie discard pile for a 3-player game. And that's the victory condition in the training mode. Each of the others, as I said, have different conditions. So that's it for Goblins vs. Zombies training mode. I hope you'll meet you back at the Wall of Weaponry. Well, that's all for the rules. Please remember to share, like, and subscribe, and I hope to see you in my review and playthrough videos as well.